Now, there's a difference between illusion and incorrect. I can say 2 and 2 is 5. Is that an illusion? No, it's just wrong. It's not like I imagine that 2 and 2 is 5. No, I added it up and it came out 5, so I must be doing something wrong. So if I have a wrong opinion, that's not the same as an illusion. Then there's also the effect of the mind on your emotions, on your body, on your perception of the world. The role that the brain plays in our understanding of the world. That's also not an illusion in the strict sense of the word. So for example, I'm frightened because I think there's a boogeyman under the bed. So I break out in a sweat and I get very nervous and I'm trembling. That's an illusion? There's an illusion that there's a boogeyman under the bed, but the physical symptoms are not an illusion. The mind does that to the body. When the mind says there is something to be afraid of, the body reacts with terror, right? So, for example, and he uses the example here in the text, the placebo effect. I give you a pill, it's nothing but sugar, and you feel better. See, it's an illusion. No, it's not an illusion. You feel better. It's not an illusion that you feel better. The illusion is that you think I gave you medicine. I didn't. I just gave you sugar, which is better than medicine. But so why do you feel better? Because your brain is saying, okay, now we're better. So the body calms down and feels better. But that's the psychosomatic effect. It's not an illusion. In fact, if we could heal ourselves strictly by placebo, we would be the healthiest people in the world. So if you can convince yourself that you're healthy, you will be healthy. Not an illusion. The trick is, I gave you what seems to be medicine, and that convinced you that you're getting better. There's a story that's supposed to describe silliness and immaturity. Some guy walks out of a shtetl and he's laughing hysterically, and they say, "What's so funny?" He says, "I had the whole town fooled. I fooled them all. I had them all." "Yeah, what did you do?" "I told them my name is Yankel." "It's not. It's not." He had them all fooled. So he created an illusion for all of them. It's not an illusion, it was just wrong information. So the word illusion needs to be understood more precisely. Okay, let's see. If we really want to know whether the world is real versus imaginary or illusionary, the place to look for an answer, of course, is Hasidus. There are answers in philosophy, in Jewish philosophy. But those answers are philosophical, which means it still leaves room for debate. Whereas when Hasidus gives an answer, it's an answer. It's conclusive. What do we know about the world? So the first thing we know about the world is Bereshis Bora Elikim. Here you have that text. I think you might know it by heart. Bereshis Bora Elikim es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz. If you want to know whether the world is real, the Torah says, in the beginning the Eibishter created the world. So if Torah says, then it's real. So the Torah is saying that the Eibishter created a world. So he created something. The question is what? Did he create an illusion? That would be a creation. Who is having this illusion? Maybe the whole world is an illusion. What? Whose illusion? Yours? You are having an illusion? So, are you real? Or are you just an imaginary creature imagining that it's having an imagination? It's becoming ridiculous. So even if you perceive the world as an illusion, you are real. Because you're the perceiver, not the perception. And you are real but cannot see reality. This is so tortured thinking, you know. So when the Torah says, Bereshis bara Elikim, it means that he created a heaven and an earth, not the illusion of a heaven and an earth. However, there are so many places in Torah, and particularly Chassidus, where we are told the opposite. Ein oid milvade. It is such an important concept in Torah, and particularly in Chassidus, that there is nothing besides Hashem. Meaning that the world is not real. So did the Eibishter create a world? A real world? Or is the world not real? This is where we have a significant discussion. It's not that the world is imaginary. It's that there is no world. That's very different. Because ein oid means there is nothing else, not even an illusion. Because the whole point is that the Eibishter is the only. Well, if there's an illusion, well, that's not him. So there is something besides him. So if the Eibishter created a world that is an illusion, then yesh oid, not ein oid. Okay. Now he goes into a discussion of what is the difference between reality and perception. What would be a good example of an illusion versus reality?
Fear of what happens tomorrow.
That is not an illusion. No. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
It's really scary. Why is it an illusion? It's like
You don't know.
it's like you live in California and you're terrified of earthquakes. Well, yeah.
But you don't know
That's
what
not-
happens tomorrow.
No, okay. If you have the illusion that there's going to be an earthquake tomorrow,
Yeah.
that would be an illusion. But if you're worried that there might be,
Okay.
you're right.
Okay, fine. So the illusion that there will be one, and now I can't live today because I'm
Okay.
imagining that there's going to be an earthquake tomorrow.
Okay. And what would be the reality in contrast to that illusion? That there's not going to be an earthquake tomorrow?
No, that I'm here today. And
Okay, so today is more real than tomorrow.
yeah,
So any projection would be an illusion.
yeah.
Any prophecy would be an illusion. I guess.
I guess.
If you're not, for example.
If what?
Like imagining that you're famous and actually you're not famous at all. Like that's like having a full, completely confused perception of, you know, like dreaming that you live in Hollywood when you actually live in Crown Heights. Like
There's a difference.
So if you're a legend in your own mind,
right? Because your kids know who you are, so you think you're a star. Example of an illusion.
I have an interesting question. Where does illusion come from? What creates illusion? Okay, there are, of course, illusions, even if the world is real. What is an illusion and where does it come from? And why do we do that? Why do we have illusions? Entertainment?
Memories in our mind.
Uh-huh.
The memory in our mind.
A bad memory
Or a good memory.
or a good memory?
Wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, meaning
We want to change what we perceive. So we create something that makes, if I can use the word, sense to us or helps us through the day, whatever that might be.
that makes a lot of sense. If I imagine that I'm safe because I can't stand being insecure, makes perfect sense. It's my survival instinct. But what about the opposite? Everything is secure, and you're under the illusion that everything is not secure, and you're cracking up about it. Why would you do that to yourself? If you do it to yourself.
If we were able to, if we can imagine, if we have this imagination that everything is going wrong, then now I have an
All right.
opportunity to fix it.
Okay, so now
So we think that we can
tell me,
fix
what is the difference between imagination and illusion?
reality and non-reality.
Meaning?
Wait, imagination? Same thing. Illusion has a feeling of falseness to it.
And imagination?
In imagination, it's accepted, like it's thought of in a positive way. It's an imagination. You have a good imagination.
Yeah.
But if you say you have a good illusion, you wouldn't say that.
Then you can make the best movies. I think the difference might be imagination means I know I'm imagining. Illusion means I don't know that I'm illuding. Was there such a word like that? I'm illusioning. In other words, in imagination, you know it's imagination. When you're under an illusion, you think it's real. Yeah. So there's this classical, which maybe would be relevant a little further on. There's a guy in Russia, in the bad days, he wanted to get out. He was desperate to get out of Russia. And there was no way. Until he hit on a plan. There's a train that goes from Moscow to Switzerland. And it has a refrigerated car, which once they close, they don't open until it arrives in Switzerland, because they don't want to warm up the car. So once they lock it in Moscow, they don't open it until all the other cars get inspected. So he decided that he is going to smuggle himself into the refrigerated car, the freezer car, and get out of Russia. He was a scientist, so he calculated how long can a person survive in a sealed car, because there's no air. His calculations told him that he could just about make it. It'll be difficult, he might die, but then again, he might make it, and it's worth the risk. Anyway, he smuggled himself into the car, and when they arrived in Switzerland, they opened the car, he was dead. But they saw on the wall of the car where he kept a record of his condition, like short of breath, hard to breathe, can hardly breathe. By the hour, he checked it off. And then by the time they got there, he was dead. The really strange thing was that he went into the wrong car. It was not sealed. There was air.
There was air, but it wasn't enough.
Nope.
Oh, his mind.
It was all in mind.
All in his mind.
How long was he in the car?
12 hours. I don't know.
This isn't a true story.
Yeah. So his brain killed him. Right? Is that an illusion?
It's reality.
No, he had an
Illusion
illusion.
causes reality.
He was also imagining.
changed by an illusion. Right.
I don't know if we could call it an illusion. It was a miscalculation. Given the assumption that the car is sealed, so it wasn't sealed. So it's simply a mistake, not an illusion. So if somebody, oh, I thought I locked the door. I didn't? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you had an illusion that you locked the door? No, you thought you did and you didn't. So illusion has to have some element of fantasy or disconnected from reality. But a mistake in reality is not an illusion, is it? You're imagining things? No, you miscalculated.
But then he starts to imagine, based on his miscalculation,
No,
based on his illusion that the
right.
door is
Based
sealed.
on his calculation, he followed the logic and died, because he logically should die. So again, it's a psychosomatic effect. But the brain is not imaginary. The brain is real. And it has a real effect on your body. That's why misinformation is more dangerous than illusion. Can be more dangerous. So not knowing the reality is more dangerous than having a good imagination. Because, like you said, why do we have illusions? To protect ourselves from the harshness or the difficulties of life. But if you have misinformation, you're not protected. You're not protecting. You're just in trouble because somebody gave you bad information. So it's interesting. What does the Torah say about illusion? You're not allowed to mislead a person, right? If somebody asks you which way on the road, or which in the fork of the road, which road leads to Rome, and you give them the wrong one, that's illusion. But it's not allowed, which means the world is not an illusion, because if it was an illusion, then what's the difference? Which way? I misled you. No, I didn't. It's all an illusion. So if misleading a person is a sin, it means that there is a reality and you misled. But if it's all illusion, so what's the difference? You're not allowed to lie. What do you mean? The whole thing's a lie. There's nothing true. So what do you mean you can't lie? Our whole existence is a lie, so it's another lie. Okay, so
Could you repeat that one more time? That what you just said?
about misleading,
Yeah.
if it's a sin, lifnei iver lesitin michshel, or gnevas das, when you give wrong information, it's gnevas das, and it's a sin. But why would it be a sin if everything is an illusion anyway? So you distorted the truth? There is no truth. It's all an imagination. So you see, there is a truth, and if you deny it or misinform, leading people away from the truth, that's a sin. So what if in your illusion you give the wrong information? What makes it wrong? Another thing. If the world is an illusion, then our morality is also an illusion. Right and wrong? How could you do that? Do what? It's all an illusion. So if the world was an illusion, we wouldn't have the right to be morally upset or moral indignation. What happened? You had the wrong illusion. You're supposed to have that illusion. You're supposed to have this illusion. There would be no morality, right? or we wouldn't be able to take it seriously. So we would have an illusion of morality. That's getting crazy. Nonsense. All right, so what is our definition of reality? Hasidus explains that, what does it mean, created? God created the world. What does create mean? We can do this with every word in the dictionary. Create means cause to exist. An artist creates a work of art. That's not bara. In fact, there's a text for it. Let's take a look. He's quoting from the Ramban. The Eibishter created the world from absolute nothingness. We have no other way to describe creation than to say bara, which means something from nothing. So when you say Bereshis bara, God created, you have to add, as if it's a commentary, created something from nothing. But really the word bara means something from nothing. So what does bara mean? Caused to exist. Because before he caused it to exist, it didn't exist. It's almost like, what did God create? God created light. That's not the real meaning of create. And the earth was dark. The earth? Which earth? When did Hashem say, let there be an earth? Or water? Where did David say, let there be water? He said, let the water separate. But where did he say, let there be water? So before the Eibishter said, Yehi Eir, there was already earth, there was darkness, there was water. When were those things created? So the Medrash says the word Bereshis is an instruction for earth and water and air and darkness to exist. So the real creation was before the Eibishter said Yehi Eir. So what is Yehi Eir? Illuminate what is. So you're already dealing with what is. So what's illuminate? Turn on the light. You have a room, it's dark, you turn on the light. It's not coming out of nowhere. Let the earth give forth vegetation. Let the water separate. You see, you're already dealing with what is. The real bara is shamayim va'aretz, not the details. The first day after creation, the Eibishter said, let there be light. The second day after creation, maybe that's why it says Bereshis. In the beginning, not the beginning. The beginning was shamayim va'aretz. And that came out of nowhere.
At least in the beginning it was earth, water, darkness. That was the very beginning.
And heaven.
So,
And that's what Bereshis bara l'kim es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz. That's it. The world is now created. Now, on the first day after that, the Eibishter said Yehi Eir. And on the second day, he separated the waters. And on the third day, he made things grow.
so when was the Ruach Elokim Rachafes? When was that? On day one?
Before day one. Now, let's understand another thing. What does it mean? He says here, afisa muchletes. Absolute nothingness. If I say nothing, do I have to add absolute? Is nothing not nothing? What part of nothing don't you understand? There was nothing. I mean, nothing. Okay, I got it. Nothing. No? So when the Torah puts an emphasis on something, it's not just to be dramatic. There was like absolutely Torah doesn't do that. There was nothing. That's true enough, and you don't have to embellish. So when it says absolute nothing, it's telling you something in addition, right? So there is, for example, a chicken has never laid an egg. Never. There are no eggs. No egg exists. Yeah, but there's a chicken. What is a chicken? A chicken is a bird that lays eggs. There is no egg. But if there's a chicken, then in a sense there is an egg. Just like if there's an egg, you know there's a chicken. If there's a chicken, you know there's an egg. He hasn't laid the egg yet. But the egg already exists in potential. It just hasn't happened in the physical. So you can't say, there's no such thing as eggs, there's only a chicken. If there's a chicken, there's an egg. In the same way, you can't say there is no world. Nothing was created. There is a creator, right? You say, Ein Oid Milvade, there's only him. And him is a creator. If there's a creator, then there's a creation. It hasn't happened yet? Okay, so it hasn't happened yet, but there is a creation. But the creation has not yet presented itself. So it exists in potential. So it's not nothing. Potential is a serious issue. So if something exists only in potential, it's real, it exists. But there is no world yet. And even if no world will ever be, if there is a creator, there's a creation in him. It's like, people say about writers. The writer says, I have a book in me, I just haven't written it yet. And it's true, right? A composer, he's got a song in him, but otherwise he's not a composer. So if you say he's a composer, there's got to be a composition somewhere. If you're a writer, there's got to be a book there somewhere. That's why the secret is the Eibishter is not a creator. That is so important. When you say Ein Oid Milvadei, you're saying he is not a creator with a creation waiting to pop out. He's not a creator. He is the Eibishter. To create, it's beneath his dignity. He's not a carpenter. So you can't say the Eibishter is a creator who needs to get the creation out. Like he's carrying around an egg and it's got to be laid. No, there is no world in him waiting to come out. On the contrary, since he is so infinite, there can't be a finite world in him somewhere. So, when we say Ein Oid Milvadei, and we say Bereshis Bara Elikim, it's really saying the same thing. Bara means out of nowhere. Out of nowhere means there was no potential world waiting to be created. Because if it did exist in potential, then it's not out of nowhere. It went from potential to actual. That's not out of nowhere. So when we say God created the world out of nothing, yesh me ayin, ayin means absolute nothing. It's not just that it hasn't happened yet. There's no reason for it to happen. It doesn't already exist in potential. There is nothing. Question is, once God does create the world, did that change anything, or is it still nothing?
I thought you said that if there's a creator, there's a creator.
Huh?
I thought you said if there was a creator, there's a creator.
Right. That's why it's important to know that the Eibishter is not a creator. You can say he is the creator, because he created the world. But he is a creator? No. To create is uncharacteristic of him.
So Hashem created the potential for the world to be created by us.
Right. He created the world in stages. First he created the potential out of
Nothing.
right. And then from the potential he put it together.
So it's better to say cause to exist than create.
Exactly. Because create could mean forming, shaping, putting together that which already exists. Whereas when you say caused to exist means it did not exist. So let me give you the punchline before we go through the whole thing. God is not a creator, and the world did not exist in potential. But then he creates the world. Now you can look at that two ways. One is, there was no potential, the world had no reason to exist, it only exists because he decided to create it, and therefore it is nothing. It's a whim on God's part. But to say that the world is real, of course not real. It's nothing. It started off nothing, it remains nothing. And you even have the explanation that if you cause something that doesn't exist to exist, can it now exist on its own? The answer is no, because what do you mean it?
Yeah, but what if you what if you create a child which came from nothing, then became a person,
It came from something.
and then they can exist on their own?
No.
Didn't come from nothing.
Well, once it was never there, except in our vision.
Okay.
No. It's not an illusion. It's for real. So if there's a mother, then there's a child.
Potential, if it has
Yeah.
conceived you,
But potential is real.
but it might not ever happen.
That's right. So it will remain in potential. So it will continue to exist as a potential. So what is the argument? If you create something from nothing, can it? What's it? There's no it. There's just the creator causing. But it is nothing. It was nothing. It remains nothing. So when you say God caused it to exist, it means it doesn't have an existence. Yeah, but maybe God gave it, and gave what? You see what I'm saying?
Well, isn't it really more that God is causing himself to exist?
In other words, there's nothing besides him.
Right.
So that's the argument that the world is not. Because if it wasn't to begin with, then there is no it. Say, but God gave it. God made it able. Made what able? If you take a stone and you chip at it until you make a form and you turn it into a little statue, okay, it is now a statue. So on the one hand, when you say God created the world out of nothing, it means that the world will always be nothing. On the other hand, there was nothing, and God created the world. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So, of course, the world is not of its own reality. But look how real it is if out of nothing God decides to create it. So what should we emphasize? How invested God is in the world, or how meaningless the world is? So again, the fact that God creates the world out of nothing means that the world is really something, or it's nothing. Both. The world on its own is absolutely nothing. But when God creates it, it becomes God's ultimate purpose. You know what that means? So it gives the world so much more substance, the fact that it came out of nothing. No? Okay, let's get to the real. There's a little piece here from text 8 from Samson Raphael Hirsch. I'm not sure we need a quote for this. But basically what he's saying is, Yitzchak was born miraculously. Why? Because the point is that the entire existence of Jewish people is above nature, is beyond nature. So we can survive anything because our whole existence is supernatural. So no matter what nature does or throws at us, we're going to survive because we were never subjected to the restrictions of nature in the first place. We were born miraculous. So here's the point that this course is making. You have on page 16, you have figure 1.5b. There are 4 models of reality. The first is worldly reality, and that is the world is not an illusion. Simply said, if you try to walk through a wall, you're going to get hurt. So, but I imagine there's no wall. Too bad. You're going to end up in the hospital. Say, but I imagine there was no wall. You can imagine all you want, but a wall is a wall, and you walked into it. In fact, this is really interesting. If you really imagine that there was a wall when there wasn't, and you walked into it, would you get bruised?
Real bruise?
Yes.
Or in illusionary?
Real bruise.
I really died.
The guy really died. If you could really convince yourself there's a wall there and you walk into it, you better get bruised. Otherwise, it'll shatter your illusion. So the first model is there are laws of nature and you can't escape. You throw a stone into the air, it's going to fall back to earth, despite all your imaginations. That's the first model. Of course, the problem with that we already spoke about. That means that there can be no morality. Things are what they are, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's not really acceptable. What's the second possibility? The second possibility is creation reality. The world is real because God created it. Bereshis bara Elikim. So religiously, or from a Torah perspective, the world is real because the Eibishter created it. He created it real. Then there's the third reality, and that is a godly reality. That if God created it, then its existence is godly. Let's see what that means. So we read the Bereshis bara, that he created something from nothing. Why do we refer to the Eibishter as nothing? It's a little insulting, isn't it? Obviously, the meaning is the Eibishter created the world with nothing to work with. You had no raw materials. So he created the world from scratch. We're not referring to him as nothing. We're just saying he was working with nothing. But if you read the words literally, the world is not he created the world from nothing. The world is a something that came from nothing. But it came from him. Or in different words, it came from nothing but him. So why are you calling it nothing? So the answer, the conventional answer is, we're describing him as nothing, meaning nothing we can identify. He's not a thing. So he's a non-thing. Not that he's nothing. We're not dismissing him as non-existent. We're saying his existence is not like a thing. So it's something, the world is only a thing, but it comes from God who is not a thing. Like you can say, anything finite can be called something. Anything infinite can't be, if he's infinite, then what is he? Is he big or small? Infinite? He's not big, he's not small. So is he old or young? Infinite. So he's timeless, spaceless, and therefore not a thing. According to this, God's involvement in creating the world makes the world insignificant. Yes, he created the world, but he is the reality, not the world. Precisely because he is no thing, infinite. If he is infinite and the world is only finite, then what's the world? Nothing to talk about. It's so insignificant, we might as well just talk about God. So yes, the world is real, but only because of him. And him is so overwhelming that the world disappears in his presence. So once we know that something about God, all of a sudden the world that he created becomes tiny and unimportant and insignificant. That's called a godly reality. So a good example would be the story in the Gemara where the girl lit Shabbos candles thinking that there was oil in the lamp, and it turned out that it was vinegar. So she was upset because vinegar doesn't burn. So her father said to her, why do you think oil burns? Something about the oil? No. The Eibishter tells oil to burn. So today the Eibishter will tell the vinegar to burn.
That did.
And it did, a whole Shabbos. Because, once you're doing miracles, it might as well last a whole day.
Same with the icicles in Russia.
The Baal Shem Tov. Break off an icicle and light it. Say, but that doesn't burn. What does burn? Whatever the Eibishter says to burn. So, in other words, the reality of the icicle is God. From that perspective, there's no such thing as a miracle. Because everything's a miracle. When you think oil burns, vinegar doesn't. A candle will burn, an icicle will not. Now you're seeing the world as a worldly reality, the laws of nature. But when you're thinking, what? So vinegar will burn, so the icicle will burn. Now you're seeing the world from a godly reality. It's all him. So why can't he make the vinegar burn?